Hi everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Inspiring Idea Recommend series. Today is a special episode because we got a special guest with us today. Please welcome Fabio. Fabio, welcome to the show.
Hi, Abby. Nice to be back with you guys.
That's great. Fabio will be sharing his 3 recommendations with us today. So let's get the show started. All right, Fabio, what's your first recommendation?
Okay, so my first recommendation is a management book, and you wouldn't think so by looking at the title, Creativity Inc. But Creativity Inc. is a book written by Ed Catmull. Ed Catmull is one of the best researchers in the world in computer graphics, and a recipient of the ACM award for computing in computer graphics. Now, Ed Catmull wrote this book to essentially illustrate how to manage people well, how to make sure a manager can make their team function the best, and remove all the hurdles that will hinder people, will not make the team do their best work or be bogged down by processes or bureaucracy. This is really interesting because the whole story is chronicled through many decades of Pixar's work. And so very much all the strategies for making people do the best work are described as Catmull talks through all the stories of how Toy Story or Cars or, Finding Nemo were actually brought to life by Pixar.
That's great, Fabio. Some of the movies that you mentioned are my favorite movies and very, very successful movies. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading this book because, like as you said, it has got some really good tips that how can you create a very creative team and get a lot of success. That's great, Fabio. What's your second recommendation?
Okay, the second recommendation is thematically somewhat in line, but it's got a twist. So the professor you see portrayed in the video was called Randy Pausch. He passed away a few decades back. He was a seminal figure in computer science because he was one of the first professors in computer science who thought that computer science should somewhat be married with arts. And so he's one of the forerunners working with Disney and Electronic Arts in the computer game space, which is the area that I do work in. So in a way, he's been one of the people that I used to look up to when I was younger. Now, apart from his incredible seminal work, Randy Pausch is very well known for unfortunately being diagnosed of pancreatic cancer. And the way they reacted to that is completely inspirational. He knew that, and he spent the last 18 months of his life working really hard and going around campaigning for pancreatic cancer to become something well known in the US and in the world. And he gave this very famous last lecture at Carnegie Mellon University, where he actually explained how he spent his whole life just trying to reach his childhood dreams. And at the end of the lecture, you realize that essentially the lecture was just something he did for his kids. So it's very, very moving. And, he's been inspirational both in his work and his volunteer work in the last 18 months of his life.
That's really good. This one is really inspiring as well. And I would definitely recommend everyone to also watch this particular video with your kids. I'm sure it will inspire them as well. All right, Fabio, let's move on to the third recommendation.
So my third recommendation is once again a book, and this is a bit of a classic, Gödel, Escher and Bach. Now, Gödel, Escher and Bach is a very well-known book if you ever studied or being interested in AI. And the reason for that is because this classic book written by Douglas Hofstadter, essentially tries to provide knowledge around the theory of mind. How does the brain work? How does the mind conceptualizes the sort of concepts that we try to decrypt and interpret? And in many ways, the most fascinating thing about this book is that Hofstadter tries to do that by looking at different areas of human endeavor. Kurt Gödel is one of the most well-known logicians in the world, a mathematician. Escher is one of the most well-known artists for his crazy hypergeometric portraits of the world, and Bach is considered a complete genius in the classical music space. So by looking at all those different areas, Hofstadter tries to map those very interesting conceptual problems around the mind and the brain, which makes this a complete classic for anyone who wants to get into AI and understand the brain and the mind.
And Fabio, why should people read this book?
Well, they should read this book, obviously, if they are interested in AI, but also because this is really an incredibly fascinating way of describing these problems. There's no way of describing this other than what this big Wikipedia entry does. It's a little bit like one of Lewis Carroll's book. You go on a bit of a rabbit hole and follow all those different themes in the book, and then somewhat they actually connect all together, and you get this kind of holistic view of what the mind might be.
Wow, that sounds really good. Thanks, Fabio. Thanks for all your great recommendations today.
No worries, Abby. Always happy to come along.
All right, guys. Thanks everyone for watching this particular episode. Stay safe and stay inspired.